The Nightster or Sportster S. Which should you buy? This is a video comparing the strengths and weaknesses of each of these two Harley-Davidson motorcycles. If you're considering one, you really should look at the other, as they're not too far apart in terms of pricing. Where the Iron 883 and 48 are still sold in the US, these two bikes appear to have been completely dropped from Australia's lineup, making the Softail Standard the cheapest Harley-Davidson model sold here. Some might be surprised at this, expecting a Sportster to take that title, but that's no longer the case, at least here in Australia. Pricing-wise, the Nightster now sits neatly between Harley's Milwaukee 8 Softail Standard and 114 Street Bob, with the Sportster S only a couple of $100 more expensive than the Street Bob. Where the Softail lineup offers the more traditional Harley riding experience, the new Nightster and Sportster S are designed to appeal to riders seeking a lighter weight, V-twin, liquid-cooled performance cruiser. A cruiser with enough horsepower to keep you entertained right out of the box. In the US, the Nightster starts at $13,499 US. In Australia, the Nightster starts at $23,995 Australian dollars. In the UK, the Nightster starts at 12,999 British pounds. And for Europe, well, there are 44 countries that make up the continent of Europe. So, as a representative, I'm going to pick just one and use Germany. And in Germany, the Nightster starts at 14,995 euros. And for the Sportster S, in the US, the Sportster S starts at 15,499 US dollars. In Australia, the Sportster S starts at 26,495 Australian dollars. In the UK, the Sportster S starts at 14,595 British pounds. And in Germany, the Sportster S starts at 16,795 euros. Pricing will surely affect your purchasing decision, so be sure to check the pricing difference in your own particular country. Let's dive into the specs of each bike by kicking off with the wet weight, fully fueled, ready-to-ride figures. The Nightster weighs in at 481 pounds, and the Sportster S weighs in at 502 pounds. We're talking a 7 kilogram or around 15 pound difference here. In the grand scheme of things, that's very little difference. But the Nightster does have a bit of a trick up its sleeve by placing the fuel tank under the seat. By shifting the fuel tank lower down from atop the engine, the centre of mass will be lower on the Nightster, and it should feel lighter to pick up off the stand. I have sat on the Nightster and ridden the Sportster S, and I can confirm this is the case. The Nightster was nice and light to pick up off the stand, but having said that, the Sportster S didn't feel a lot heavier to me when picking it up off the stand. Looking at horsepower, the Nightster produces 90 horsepower at 7,500 RPM, and the Sportster S produces 121 horsepower at 7,500 RPM. Here we can see the Sportster S producing 25% more horsepower than the Nightster, which is significant. At 90 horsepower, the Nightster won't be a slouch though, and I'm expecting the Nightster will have more than enough power to provide an entertaining ride for most people. It is to be noted here that both bikes are running Harley's new water-cooled Revolution Max engine, with the Nightster having a lower displacement at 975 cc's and the Sportster S at 1252 cc's. And after having ridden this engine in the Pan America and Sportster S, let me say, I'm a fan. Although I do prefer the more torquey state of tune of the 1252cc engine in the Sportster S over the Pan America's more high-end horsepower-focused tune. And when we see the upcoming torque figures, we'll see that the Nightster might have a little trick up its sleeve. Speaking of torque, the Nightster produces 70 foot-pound at 5,000 RPM, and the Sportster S produces 94 foot-pound at 6,000 RPM. Now pay close attention to those peak torque RPM figures. Although the Sportster S is producing a higher torque figure, the Nightster actually hits its peak torque figure 1000 RPM earlier in the rev range. The Nightster could actually feel similar to the Sportster S in off-the-line performance for real-world riding conditions. I'm looking forward to a test ride of the Nightster to make that comparison. Now let's look at the power-to-weight ratio figures of the two bikes, including the weight of a 200 pound or 90 kilogram rider. The Nightster calculates to 0.132 and the Sportster S calculates to 0.172. Okay, these figures let me know that if you put these two bikes side by side on a drag strip, the Sportster S is going to confidently take the win. If you're looking for more top-end acceleration from these two, the Sportster S might be the bike for you. Okay, now let's look at ergonomics. I was surprised by my own personal experience when sitting on these two bikes. I was expecting the Nightster's riding position to suit me better, but the opposite was true. Sitting on the Nightster, I felt I was reaching a little uncomfortably for the handlebars, which surprised me. It's a very roomy bike. For reference, I'm 6'1". Whereas when I sat on the Sportster S, I felt right at home. The handlebars were closer to me and fell right at hand, although I did find the mid-control positions more comfortable on the Nightster over the Sportster S's more forward controls. I need to clarify here. On the Sportster S, in isolation my upper body was very comfortable leaning on the handlebars, and separately my legs were very comfortable in the forward control position. But when combined, I don't think it works as well. For me, the riding position is a little more doubled up on the Sportster S. If I bought the Sportster S, I would either keep the forward controls and add mini ape handlebars to sit me more upright, relieving the stretch on my lower back, or keep the stock handlebars and replace the forward controls with mids or even rear set controls. I think the latter riding position would suit me better. The drawback to adding mini apes would be the increased air pressure on my chest at highway speeds. I'd want to add a screen if I switched out to mini apes. Fortunately, a nice looking accessory screen is available for the Sportster S. The Nightster comes standard with a front cowl fairing. I'll assess its effectiveness when I get a test ride. The takeaway here is that you really need to sit on both these bikes to see which riding position is best for you. When it comes to seat heights, the UNLADEN seat height, that's the bike without any weight on it, measures at 27.8 inches for the Nightster, and the Sportster S measures at 30.1 inches. If you're shorter in the leg, you might prefer the Nightster. Having said that, even though the Sportster S has a taller seat height, I'm predicting it should still be manageable for riders 5'3" and above. And in the case of the Nightster, 5'3" and above should be flat footing. Although if you're 5'3" with a shorter inside leg than the measurement shown, you may be on the balls of your feet. Now let's look at how each bike might handle. The Nightster, with its narrow 100mm front and 150mm rear tyres, carries its slightly reduced weight lower in the frame, providing for an easier turn-in and change of direction experience over the Sportster S's wider 160mm front and 180mm rear tyres. Having said that, I was very pleased with the handling of the Sportster S around town and on the higher speed turns, and its change of direction performance was totally fine for me. I was quite satisfied with the braking performance of the Sportster S on my test ride, and I'm expecting the Nightster to perform very similarly, with both having a single 320mm disc on the front. The Sportster S brakes had good initial bite, feel and stopping power. Here's where we are starting to see a difference in direction between the two models though, where the Nightster has a more standard actually mounted 4-piston caliper mated to its 320mm front disc. The Sportster S wears a more up-spec radially mounted monoblock 4-piston caliper on the front. Both bikes have the same 260mm disc on the rear. When it comes to brake components, I'm giving the win to the Sportster S, but I'm still expecting the Nightster's braking performance to be more than satisfactory. Suspension-wise, where the Nightster has dual shocks with 3 inches of suspension travel on the rear and preload only adjustment, the Sportster S sports a single, fully adjustable rear monoshock with preload, rebound and compression damping adjustability. But keep in mind, while being fully adjustable, the Sportster S's rear monoshock only has 2 inches of suspension travel. Up front, the Nightster also takes the comfort win with 4.5 inches of travel versus the 3.6 inches of front suspension travel of the Sportster S. But where the Nightster's 41mm Showa dual bending valve conventional forks mention no adjustability at all, the Sportster S has larger 43mm inverted forks with spring load, rebound and compression damping adjustability. The Sportster S takes the win if you like fine-tuning your suspension. Of the two, if suspension comfort is your thing, then the Nightster takes the win. If you like the ability to fully adjust your suspension and tailor it to your own riding style, as I do, then for me, the Sportster S takes the win. But be warned, even after adjustment, I'm still expecting the Sportster S to have a firmer ride. Now let's look at lean angles. Which bike can you lean over more in the bends before things start touching down? The Nightster boasts 32 degrees of lean angle left and right, and the Sportster S has a surprisingly higher 34 degrees of lean angle left and right. With its narrower stance, I was expecting the Nightster to have the upper hand here, but when it comes to lean angles, it's a win to the Sportster S. Now let's see which bike offers the better fuel range and fuel economy. How much difference is there? The Nightster has a 3.1 US gallon tank, and the Sportster S, even though it has the same 3.1 US gallon tank, due to rounding, measures slightly larger when comparing litres. 11.7 on the Nightster versus 11.8 on the Sportster S. Fuel economy figures for the Nightster are 52.4 US miles per gallon, and with its larger capacity, higher output engine, the Sportster S fares a little worse at 49 US miles per gallon. Win to the Nightster here. Fuel range to empty for the Nightster calculates to 260 kilometres or 161 miles, and for the Sportster S, we're running out at 245 kilometres or 152 miles. Not a great deal of difference, but still a win to the Nightster. Okay, I think we've got the basics covered here. Now let's look at the outstanding features of each bike and how they might compare. Starting with the dials, the Nightster has a more traditional 4-inch viewable Harley round analog gauge. In addition to the normally expected features like speed, gear position, indicators, etc., you also get a basic tach, tyre pressure warning light, traction control light, fog lamp indication, and a separate rear ABS disabled indication light. On the Sportster S, we see a significant step up in technology with Harley's new round TFT display featuring low ambient temperature alert, side stand down alert, cruise control indication, yes, the Sportster S comes standard with cruise control, range, and tachometer indication, as well as Bluetooth capable phone pairing to access phone calls, music and GPS navigation, all handled through Harley's HD app. Big win to the Sportster S here. As mentioned, the Sportster S also comes standard with cruise control, which is a must for me, and I had a look for cruise control for the Nightster in Harley's online accessories, and I could find no listing for the option of cruise control for the Nightster. The Sportster S also has provision on the switch block for heated grips. Doesn't come as standard, but is available as an optional extra. And again, I could find no heated grip option for the Nightster on Harley's online accessories page. When it comes to lighting, both these bikes pleasingly feature all LED lighting all round. Both bikes feature 6-speed gearboxes with a final belt drive, and when it comes to wheels, the Nightster has a 19-inch wheel on the front and a 16-inch wheel on the rear, and the Sportster S has a 17-inch wheel on the front paired with the 16-inch wheel on the rear. Even though the Sportster S has a smaller front wheel, with its much higher profile tyre, I'd expect the outside rolling diameter of each bike's front wheel to be very similar, if not identical. Only the Sportster S comes with a USB Type-C outlet. There's no outlet mentioned on the Nightster. Warranty on both bikes is 24 months with unlimited mileage, and service intervals are 1,000 miles or 1,600 kilometres for the first service, and then every 5,000 miles or 8,000 kilometres thereafter for both motorcycles. Okay, so where do we stand? Which is the better bike, or more importantly, which is the better buy? Well, that all depends on you, what your preferences are. After comprehensively looking at them side by side, there is not one bike I could recommend as a blanket standout over the other. I can now see why they are closely priced. For me personally, yes, there is one winner, and that's the Sportster S. I want that extra suspension adjustability, I want cruise control, I want that TFT display with Bluetooth and navigation integration. I want, but do not need, that extra power of the 1252cc engine, and I kind of prefer the riding position of the Sportster S. But that's just for me. You may prefer the lighter handling, lower seat, cheaper starting price, potentially better out-of-the-box riding position, and the more relaxed riding comfort of the Nightster. With that said, I think I've clearly demonstrated the strengths and weaknesses of each bike. It's now up to you to make your own decision. After it's all been laid out, which would you buy? Which suits you better? Let me know in the comments below. I genuinely want to know. If you've made it this far, thanks so much for watching. And if you appreciate the time and effort I put into making these videos, how about a like and a subscribe, or even a click on the join or thanks button. Until next time, bye for now.